What's going on, guys? It's me again. Back, I mean, as you can tell, the background looks a little different than normal. I'm actually on vacation and still doing a podcast, so awesome. It's me again, Danny, and I'm joined with Nathan.
Hello, I'm Nathan.
So Nathan, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about just where it all started.
All right, well, my name is Nathan North. I was served 3 years in the U.S. Army, 82nd Airborne, 3504 Blue Devils. I joined the Army versus probably any other branch because most of the rest of my family were Navy, but I didn't really want to be on a boat. But
Yeah.
from all of their stories and everything, they just kept telling me how dumb Marines were. So I was like, I definitely don't want to be a Marine then.
True,
So,
true. Yeah.
Army is where I ended up. And I think, so it was 2002 when I joined. At that point, it was well after we'd invaded Afghanistan, but we hadn't crossed the Burma into Iraq yet. So I went, I was thinking about joining, and at one point went and talked to my dad about it, and he said, oh, do you have a hankering to go to Iraq? And then I was like, well, I imagine Iraq will probably be over by the time I'm done with training, because I thought it was just going to be like Desert Storm all over again. Yeah. And I was like, no, I don't think I'll go to Iraq, but I might get a chance to go to Korea, because at that time, it was the whole axis of evil, and we thought we'd invade Korea after Iraq, so I was sure I was going to go to Korea, but I ended up doing 2 tours in Iraq instead, and we never invaded Korea, so.
Yeah, you didn't quite get what you bargained for.
No, not
That's awesome. So you were talking about earlier, you went to Fort Jackson.
Yeah, Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Yeah. It was integrated platoons there, so we had male and female, both in a platoon, but there were separate barracks.
Sure.
That was, I'm sure, added a lot of extra drama to basic training, but it was still fun. Had a couple of good friends there, Barry and Munoz, and our drill sergeant, one of our drill instructors, always used to call us the Jerky Boys, because it was our mission to just ruin everybody's life. It was our favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
We'd sit there and, when they run out of things for you to do, and they just give you nothing to do until you screw up, so they can just mess you up for hours.
Absolutely.
So we'd just be sitting there, and I'd be like, go read your, whatever they called your stupid handbook you were supposed to read.
Yeah.
So I'd sit there and everyone would be quiet, scared, reading their book, and me and Barry and Munoz would just take turns, and we'd pick somebody out and be like, hey Jackson, why are you being so noisy? Why don't you just shut up? And they'd be like, and we'd just do that until the drill sergeant's like, what's going on over there? And they just, and we'd be laughing the whole time.
Yeah.
And that was a good time. So yeah, Fort Jackson. From Fort Jackson, I went to San Antonio, Texas, so Fort Sam Houston. So I did medical training there as a combat medic.
Oh, nice.
So that was about, it was 5 or 6 months at San Antonio. San Antonio was fun. After the first month we were there, we started getting weekend passes so we could, go out and get into trouble over the weekend.
Go explore.
Yeah. San Antonio versus pretty much any other military town I've been in is really nice because the base is small, but the town is really, really big. It's a big city, so it's not affected by the base at all. So you go out into town and they actually think it's cool that you're in the military rather than in, some of the other military towns where
where the town revolves around the base.
Yeah. It's like you go out into town and it's nothing special at all. So
yeah, that's how it was in. I was stationed at Camp Pendleton in California, which is right by San Diego. Oceanside, which is the town that's right outside of it, is pretty much like that. But you go to San Diego and it's like, oh, you're in the Marines, cool, awesome. And it's like, oh, you can treat me like a regular person, yeah. Yeah,
Actually,
it's pretty cool.
last year I went on vacation to Oceanside, and there was.
I'm sorry.
Well, it was quite nice.
Yeah.
We went to the Taylor Guitar Factory, which was great.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
But I was walking down, me and my wife were walking down the wharf, and there was like, I don't know, it was probably 4 or 5 guys, and they've all got like high and tight cuts, and they're like, it's the middle of summer, and they're out in jeans wearing like boots, and I'm just like, oh man.
Yeah.
These guys are Marines.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can always spot the like new Marines because they're in like, jeans and boots, and they've got tight shirts on. They've got the high and tight. They've got one of them is wearing something that says Marines on it. Like one of them is somewhere.
Yeah.
And hopefully you kind of get out of that phase. But sometimes you never, you never do. Yeah. I
was pretty jealous though at the time, because I was like, man, I really should have joined the Marines, because then I would be here instead of like Fayetteville, North Carolina, or.
Well, it depends, because if you get stationed in San Diego or like Okinawa or Hawaii, those are all exotic locations. Or you get stationed in Cherry Point, which is in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, you have a cat. I didn't notice you had a cat until just now. But you get stationed in North Carolina, and then you're like, this sucks. Or you get stationed in 29 Palms, and you're like, there's like 6 palm trees here.
Yeah.
And the rest is just nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was Fayetteville, North Carolina, Fort Bragg. So.
Yeah. So you went. So then, Texas. What happened after Texas?
So Texas, let's see, when I was in Texas, actually, I met he was really the only guy I stay in contact with now. Yeah. Michael Hobart, he comes out every once in a while, we go backpacking, do that kind of stuff. So
awesome.
We were really good friends all the way through AIT, mostly because we, I don't know, didn't really like getting in trouble. And so, then we both went to airborne school after that. So that was Fort Benning in Georgia. Yeah, Fort Benning, Georgia. Went to airborne school, which is about 3 weeks. And airborne school is different at that time, because I was brand new, right out of basic training, right out of AIT. But in airborne, you have people from other branches and people who are, some of the other students are like E7s. And I'm just like, how do I even treat you? I'm like waiting for, my classmates to smoke the shit out of me or something.
I know.
And then we also had cadets from
like officer training.
Yeah, officer training.
OCT?
OCT or
OTC?
Yeah.
I don't know, something like, something like that.
Same thing, they've got like a big shield on their thing, and you're like, do I salute you, or like, I don't know if I'm supposed to put your head in the toilet, or what, how do I even treat you?
Yeah, do I ask you to go out for drinks, or do I call you sir or ma'am? Like,
so in airborne school, I think, like the last day, you have to do 5 jumps, and the last day that you jump, I think you do 3, or at least we did. So it was like, you do a jump one day, then you do another one, and then you do 3 jumps in one day. And I was straight out of all my medical training, and there was a guy, he was my bunkmate in airborne school. I don't remember his name now. It's been a long time ago. Yeah. But he hit his head on our second jump real bad, and he's kind of acting funny, and so I'm sort of doing like my medical assessment on him, and I'm just like, dude, I'm pretty sure you have a concussion, and so I call over one of the Sergeant Airbornes, and he comes over and he's like, I'm just like, sorry, I'm a brand new medic, but I'm pretty sure this guy's got a concussion, and he's like, we are rigged up, ready to go. He's like, how many fingers am I holding up? What's your name? No, all right, no, you're good. They pushed him out the plane, and he went for his 3rd jump, and then he really didn't feel right after the 3rd jump, but he graduated.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you got to do a job. You're there for training or whatever, and sometimes you just gotta go,
Yeah.
But it's a dangerous type. It's a dangerous thing to kind of do. But anyways, so after you went to airborne school, where'd that lead you?
So airborne school, then I went to the 82nd Airborne because that's the natural place to go after airborne school, and I went to 3504 Blue Devils. We got there just after Thanksgiving, so in between Thanksgiving, Christmas. Got there, and there was 5 medics that showed up all at once, which I guess, I found out later never happens to the medical platoon.
Oh, wow.
They never get 5 brand new medics all at one time.
Yeah.
So they didn't even know what to do. They were so excited.
Yeah.
So we got there, and when we showed up, the whole battalion was out on jump. And so there was nobody there except for like the barracks NCO to, greet us. So he just gives us rooms, sends us to bed. He's like, I don't know, be here at like freaking 6 in the morning. Like, I don't know what to do with you. So like, cool, we got our own rooms, like brand new barracks. They were super nice.
Yeah.
I had my own bedroom and a bathroom that I shared with one other guy. It was ridiculous. So about 4 o'clock in the morning, bang, 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 knock on the door. I open the door, and there's just some random E4 standing there. I'm like, and he's like, you one of the new medics? Yeah. And like, get your ass down to the aid station. Do you know where that is? No. He's like,
Yeah.
Right, just run across to that building over there. I'm like, oh, sure, okay.
Yeah.
So I go over there and go in, and our whole platoon is sitting around in the aid station. They just came off of a jump. They're all camoed up all over their faces, covered in mud and everything. So we come in, and they just, they just messed us up for hours. Hours. They had us fighting each other. And it ended up kind of being battalion legend for the 5 of us for the rest of the time I was there. They're like, nice. Oh, you were there with the other 5 medics where they just messed you up like all night long. And so that was my introduction.
That's great.
To the Blue Devil medics, who are, definitely some of the finest medics in the entire Army, but are just assholes.
Well, I mean, on your first day you had to fight each other, so I mean, I can kind of understand why,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were legendary in the battalion for running. We ran like crazy. Our first sergeant tried one day to run with us. He was a new first sergeant, and he tried one day to run with us, and we were running down Ardennes. If you've ever been to Fort Bragg, Ardennes, but it's kind of there's speakers all up and down the road. They play like music in the morning while you're running, and everybody, the whole division's out there doing PT in the morning. So he's out there running with us, and we used to go down Ardennes, and we'd take a whole path back through the woods, Area J, and it ended up being a really long run, and we ran fast. So we're going, and he's running with us, and then he kind of falls back to where I was, and he's like, hey Doc, what's going on, First Sergeant? How far do you guys usually go? I don't know, like 8 to 12 miles. He's like, do you run this fast the whole time? Yeah, pretty much. Fuck this. I'm gonna go run with the scouts. He takes off, and he never ran with us again. And then, we were also legendary for getting DUIs, so that wasn't great. Well, I never got a DUI myself, but
that's I think that's a staple in the Marine Corps. DUI, divorce, or some sort of drugs.
Yeah.
Or getting pregnant. I mean, it's usually one of those 4.
Yeah. Well, we didn't. So it was infantry battalion. We were the medic for the infantry battalion, so no females. At least then. I don't know if it's different now. I kind of think
I'm not too sure. I know they've talked over the years about integration, but I don't know specifically. I don't really keep up with it as much as I used to. I don't know if they've fully integrated in any branch.
Gotcha.
But I know it's been talk back and forth over the last 5 or 6 years at least.
Yeah. Well, back then there wasn't. So I showed up there, and they had all just got back from Afghanistan like a couple of months before. They're like fresh back from Afghanistan, so they're all tight-knit war buddies and everything.
Sure. Yeah.
And they're we had like a whole meeting, or not us, but they had, you know, like their family meeting and everything, where all the wives and everything come in, and the battalion commander talks to them, and he spent all this time assuring them, nope, there is no more deployments coming up right now. The only place we're scheduled to go is to go to some training thing, and like this was November. They're like, everyone's gonna be home for Christmas. You know, we're not going anywhere until February. And then like 2 days later, we got deployment to Iraq orders. And you couldn't even find the battalion commander that day because there was just pissed off wives running all over the place.
He decided that was the day he was going to call in sick. Yeah.
So then we were, you know, boots on the ground in Iraq about.
What year was this?
This
was your first. Was this your first time?
This is my first deployment. So this was the end. So 2003, like November 2003 is when I got there. So then that was January of 2004. We were boots on the ground, and I got really lucky. I did 2 short deployments. They were just 6-month deployments.
Yeah.
So
wow.
January to like June, and then the next one was like late summer to, you know, spring sometime. I don't know.
Wow.
They're both like 6 months, so those were kind of nice. But.
Yeah, that's crazy for the Army, especially back then when people were doing like 15-month deployments. Like 6 months was you got lucky. Like
well, our first one was because we essentially were doing taking over for a National Guard unit who didn't have any relief. They had done like their 18 months or something, and they're like, we literally have no one for this force protection, and we were ready to go. And so they were like, oh well, we'll just throw these paratroopers into this National Guard spot, which also pissed us off. But
yeah, I bet, yeah.
But it was fun. That that deployment was mostly force protection. We did a lot of gate guard, QRF. And so we didn't do a whole bunch of like
your actual job.
Yeah, continuing missions and everything. So that was actually a good time. It worked out a lot.
Now, where was this?
Movies.
In Iraq? Oh,
yeah.
Where in Iraq was this?
It was called Camp Cedar. I think it might have been called Camp Cedar 2. But at that time, it was a little truck stop.
Okay.
And it was south of Balad, I believe.
Okay.
So Balad was the big base, and then we were just our company. The rest of the battalion was up at Balad, and the rest of us were down at our company was down at Camp Cedar.
Okay. Yeah, I've been to Balad. I might have drove past, you know, Camp Cedar. It was probably called something else when we were there, but I know where Balad is. I'm not too familiar where, you know, your little gas. I'm sure it was like just a little gas up station type thing.
It was a little bit bigger, but it was pretty much a truck stop.
Yeah,
and we did tower guard and we did QRF, and that was pretty much it for, you know, like 6 months. And
a lot of bootleg movies, a lot of the same movies over and over again.
A lot of the same movies, and then you start going around to everybody. You know, back in those days, we all carried our DVDs in these little cases. We didn't have these fancy hard drives.
Yeah. Even when I went in 07, 08, and it was the same thing. Like, a lot of people got the bootleg DVDs where the cover was just like a picture from the actual whatever you were watching. And some people had, you know, hard drives, but I mean, when you're out in the middle of nowhere, like, if it breaks, that's it. And if you have all your stock, you know, at like, you know, a terabyte or whatever, like, you've got nothing left, and now you're, hey, what are you watching tonight? Can I come sit with you?
Yep, exactly.
Well, there's not that much room on my bunk, you know, like.
Got like 10 guys stacked on your bunk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we had stuff like that. We had a field mess kitchen, and you would set up somebody's like laptop. You'd have a pair of speakers where, you know, you'd have to like jiggle the wire to make sure it worked well, and then you have like 10 people just all huddled around, you know, like a little screen watching whatever, you know. I think one of our favorite ones is we got like, it was like a 6 CD collection of or DVDs of Jackie Chan movies, and they were all just like, they were all like bootleg quality, like somebody recorded it with a camcorder, you know. But that was one of our favorite ones that we all used to watch, was because because they didn't talk much, so they just was a lot of kung fu. So it was it was just pretty fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that was where, so that deployment we had pretty nice tents. There was like 6 of us to a tent. I was the medic, so I was always with the platoon sergeant. So it was like me, the platoon sergeant, lieutenant, and then this is a real job title, everybody, Fister. And
it's probably not what you're thinking, because I know some of you who are watching this, and it's not what you're thinking.
They're forward observers. But anyway, we all shared a tent, and the forward observer and my platoon sergeant were like best friends. They rode motorcycles and everything together.
Yeah.
So I came in one day. I'm brand new private. I'm E2. I'm the medic for this infantry company or infantry platoon, and I had been really, really quiet up to that point. And I came walking in one day, and platoon sergeant and forward observer, there was I walked in at a lull in the conversation, so they were just sort of looking at each other but not speaking.
Yeah.
I came in and stopped and looked at them, and they both looked at me. I was like, am I interrupting something here? Should I go? And the platoon sergeant's like, Doc, you're interrupting you doing push-ups. And Roger that. And he's like, get up.
Yeah.
Doc, you're a smart ass, aren't you? Yes, I am, Sergeant.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
And after that, it was kind of on. I was just a smart ass all the time.
Yeah, that's great. Well, once you start getting comfortable with people, you can start being like yourself. When I first joined my unit, excuse me, right out of quartermaster school, this corporal, she basically taught me everything I know. But me and one of my friends, she was like, "You guys are the most boringest PFCs I've ever met." And we just kind of look at each other, and we're just like, well, we don't want to set a bad reputation right away. And I was like, "Excuse me, corporal, I'm a lance corporal. I'm not a I'm not a PFC." And she just she looked at me, and I was like, "Sorry, my bad." But yeah, you kind of want to, you don't want to establish yourself, because those people, I'm sure you've seen them, of them before you even meet them. And having a reputation like that is kind of for the most part bad. Sometimes if you I don't know, save somebody's life, somebody was choking or something like that, then they're like, "Oh, you're the guy who did that." But if they're like, "I've heard of you," then you're like, "Oh, jeez, what did I do wrong?" You don't want one of those kind of reputations.
I usually have a reputation as a smart ass but good at my job, so I feel like that's an okay reputation.
I'm better at my job than I am being a smart ass, so you can't fire me.
Exactly.
Yeah. So where did it lead you? So after your first deployment, you went back to you said
Fort Bragg,
Fort
North
Bragg.
Carolina.
Yeah.
So we went back to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and then that whole summer, so this would be summer of 2004.
Oh.
Okay, yeah. So that whole summer was just lots and lots of training, lots and lots of, dumb field exercises and time in the woods and everything. It was just kind of normal Army.
Yeah.
Then we got deployment orders actually for Afghanistan, and they were like, "We're going to Afghanistan in 6 months." So we're like, "Cool, all right, whatever. We got plenty of time to get ready to go." So I was actually excited about that deployment, and then just a few months, it was 2 months before, it was kind of our sister battalion. So we were 3 504, and then there was 2 504. 2 504 is actually where my buddy Hobart from AIT went to. So we were still hanging out at Fort Bragg. We just weren't in the same unit. Sometime in their orders, so they were still going to Afghanistan, but ours got canceled, and they were like, "Oh, we don't know what you guys are going to do actually." So then they all left and went to Afghanistan, and so then I was just, sort of hanging out back at Bragg. And instead what they decided to do with us was send us to West Point to train cadets. So the cadets at West Point over the summer, normal college they get to go home over the summer. West Point, they're like, no, you're going to go and play, soldier all summer long, which we like to tell them the whole time we were there.
Remind them.
Yeah, like, normal people that go home, and you get, and they're just like, yeah, we know, we know, come on. So we spent all summer long training cadets, which for us was mostly range coverage for the medics, and then all of our infantry and everything were the ones like doing the classes. We did some medical classes, but for the most part we were doing range coverage, which was fun, except for I'm not exactly sure what happened, but most of our NCO chain of command, so we had an LT who had recently graduated West Point, and so he was kind of, it's like, my old alma mater, and he just sort of was running around with his old instructors and everything, and then our NCO corps, or a portion of our NCO corps, just sort of disappeared because they're like, we're in New York, let's go have fun. Somebody bought a boat, and then they were out on the river all the time.
Jeez, they bought a boat?
Yeah, and so there was a couple of E5s and a whole bunch of us E4s, and we were just kind of making everything work. We got to do our range coverage, we got to get everything done, and our first sergeant would just like come by and be like, hey, where's your platoon sergeant out? And we're like, oh, he's out on range, whatever. We just saw him down there. We'll call him and get it. Okay, yeah, we'll call him. Yeah, I'll send him to you as soon as I see him. I'm like, man, I haven't seen him in like 5 days. Like, I don't even know if he's still alive. Like, he better be, otherwise we're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Somebody's getting into trouble.
Yeah. Anyway, they finally showed back up, but it was fine. But we did, me and another buddy of mine, Aaron Rice, we were just working nonstop while we were there. And, everybody else was kind of going out and having fun, and we were getting mad. And so finally, one night they opened like this little cantina on our camp, and it was called a cantina, but you couldn't actually drink there. You could go and buy booze there and take it back, and there was a certain amount you were allowed to buy. So we both went and bought the maximum amount that we were allowed to buy, and we're like, we have range coverage, but we're in the morning, but we're drinking all of this. So it was like, each of us bought a flat of Tall Boys, and we just decided we were gonna go through all of it. At one point, I was like, I don't have any idea what time it is, but I'm like hunched over like this rail out back, and I'm trying to drink this thing. I'm just like, no, dude, I can't drink anymore. And he's like kicking me in the ribs. Keep drinking. Yeah, it was ugly range coverage in the morning.
That's great.
We crawled in the back of the ambulance and started IVs on each other and took a nap.
That was the best part. So our barracks, I didn't live in the barracks, but our barracks was right next to the aid station, so that means on the first floor a bunch of the corpsmen were in there, and oh man, they would hang out with us, and we all became pretty good friends, and they would hook us up like, Monday morning, we'd be like, I'm so hungover, I got you, and then it's definitely who you know, and it makes it really cool.
There's nothing like D5W and oxygen to get rid of a hangover. That'll pretty much take care of it.
Yeah, and a lot of those corpsmen, we ended up, like, deployments, we'd run into them. Like sometimes we'd be stationed at the same base and be like, oh, Doc, I'm so tired. Like, oh, hey, man, come here, So they'd hook us up, and I was in charge of the Class 1 lot, so they would hook us up, like we'd have to work on Black Flag days and stuff like that, and I'd just be like, man, like, this Gatorade's not cutting it, and they'd be like, hey, just come into the aid station, like, I'll hook you up, like, you need a little extra juice, like, I got you. It's like, cool. Hey, Doc, like, we got some steaks. When was the last time you had steak? It's like, oh. Like, hey, we'll take care of each other, like.
I used to do barracks medicine all the time, so I get a call quite often in the middle of the night, and it'd be like, hey, Doc, hypothetical situation for you. What if this guy was real drunk and he fell down the stairs, and he was only 18, so we couldn't take him to the ER? hypothetically, what should we do?
Yeah.
I'll be right there.
Yeah. Yeah. They're the stuff you hear, like, and I'm sure you've experienced it firsthand, but like, I've been in medical before, and they're like, just sit in this room, we'll be right back, and they only have curtains in between. I was sitting there one time, and this guy was like, they were already in the middle of a conversation, and he's like, yeah, it burns, and he's like, hey man, like, the only way we're gonna find out what's wrong is we have to get really personal real quick. And you hear the dude, he's like, what? And he's like, I'm gonna take this, and I'm just like, oh man, I know where this is going. And I kind of like peek my head out to like look to see if anybody can I move somewhere else? Like, I don't want to hear this going on, but nobody's out there, and I'm like, oh man. And this was before like everybody had cell phones in their hands, like, so I was just sitting there, and like when I was for the first few years in the Marine Corps, I had a flip phone because being in the field, it broke. I mean, the excuses of me calling Sprint and being like, I lost my phone, or it fell, a Humvee ran it over, or I was helping out with the USS Tarawa, so I was on it, and I dropped it off the side of a ship. Like, I mean, they would be like, you don't have to lie. And I'm like, I'm not. Like, I'm in the Marine Corps. Like, you would be surprised. Like, when you travel around, you just, you forget your phone. That's why I had a flip phone for years, and so I couldn't like do anything on it. So I'm just sitting there, and they're getting real personal next door, and I'm just like, oh man, like, I don't want to be here right now. Like, I can't remember. I think I was getting like a TV shot, or like, I can't remember what I was there for. Something that like it wasn't urgent. And there were quite a few times where I was like, I'm just gonna leave. I'm just gonna get up and just walk out, and just, if anybody asked anything, I had to go to the bathroom or like something, But I can only imagine actually being in that room doing that. Like, ooh, no, thank you. That's why when they give you the safety brief to wrap it up, that's why you do it. PSA.
Yeah, we used to keep camouflage condoms because for some reason regular condoms nobody liked, but as soon as we got those camo ones, like, we just couldn't keep them in stock. Everybody came and they loved those, so
that's great.
We probably saved a lot of lives. Speaking of cell phones, actually, that's funny. My first jump in division. So this was actually after my first deployment, because we deployed almost as soon as I got there. Then we came back, and everybody had to go do a whole mass attack jump. Which, a mass attack jump, that's the whole battalion in the air at the same time. So it's actually really cool to see. But when we jumped, I came out the door, and I'm like, check my chute, finish spinning around, get yourself all oriented. And we jump pretty low. We jump at like 800 feet, so you don't have much time in the air.
Wow. Look
around, okay, everything's good. It's the middle of the night, and then I'm looking down, I'm like, oh man, there's a lot of, and I don't know these drop zones at all at this point because of my first jump in division, so I don't know what they're supposed to look like.
Sure.
I'm like, man, there's a lot of bushes down there. This is gonna suck. And I'm like, wait a minute. Those aren't bushes. It's like, those are trees.
Oh.
Like, I'm going in the trees. Like, and I look around and I see the drop zone like way over there. I'm like, I'm nowhere near it. I try to like slip towards it. I'm just like nothing. And so finally I'm like, okay, here we go. Like, cover my face, crash through the trees, and at this time we still had the old school IBA, so it was like the Vietnam era, like suspenders and web belt and everything. This was the last time I ever wore one. Yeah. And still had the old school IBAs. And so I come in crashing through the trees, and when you jump, you have that IBA open, so it's unlocked, so it doesn't get like tangled up in your harness. Yeah. Which is exactly what happened. So I crashed through the trees, and then I stop, and I'm just hanging there, swinging back and forth. I look down, I can't even see the ground. Oh, I'm like, okay, so I drop my rucksack and listen to it fall, and all I hear is splash. I'm like, for real? Am I really in a swamp right now? Man. And I haven't been in North Carolina long. This is our first summer there. I'm just like, are there alligators in North Carolina? I'm like, I don't know, it's the South. Aren't there alligators everywhere? It's like, so I popped my reserve chute, climb down the reserve chute, get all the way to the bottom, and at the bottom of the reserve chute, there's your little like bridle loop thing. So it's just like it's where the air escapes through.
Sure. Okay.
And my boot gets caught in it. So I'm like hanging there, 1 foot in the air. I'm holding on to the bottom,
Yeah.
and I kind of am just straining with my other leg, trying to find ground.
Yeah.
And there's like just nothing. I still don't feel the ground. And so I've climbed down a parachute and a reserve chute. So I was way up in a tree. So finally I was like barely felt my rucksack below me. So I'm like, okay, I know ground isn't that far, but I can't get it. So finally I just like let go and right back into the mud. And I get up and I'm like, look around, and all I hear, there's zero noise or light discipline. Everyone all I hear is, goddamn Air Force mother effers, rah rah, drop descend the goddamn trees, flashlights everywhere. So I just linked up with them, and we went on and continued our mission. But my IBA, which had my cell phone in the pocket, got stuck up in the tree, and I never went back and got that thing again.
Legend has it, it's still hanging in that tree right now.
Very well, maybe in that tree.
That's great. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, those are those things that I would have paid to see. I wish I could have just been like a squirrel on the ground and just been like looking up as all this is happening, because who knows how many people have been dropped in situations. I'm sure it happens. I mean, more often than you'd think. That would be hilarious to be able to see that like on a regular basis. That's pretty great. Yeah.
Well, we used to do range coverage for drops quite a bit, which was fun. When you're a medic, you do lots of range coverage, and it's not always for your own guys, so you'll go out for a lot of different things, which will also be fun because we did. You'll sometimes go out and do range coverage for like special operations and everything, and then they'll be like, hey Doc, you want to come like run through the shoot house with us? And you're just like, yeah, I want to run through the shoot house. Yes.
Yeah, we got lucky with stuff like that too, because as cooks, we'd have to go out with the infantry and stuff like that, and then they'd be doing a 10, 12 day op, and then they're like, hey, we're about to insert badass thing here. Would you want to join us?
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do. Yes. So I mean, I've gotten to shoot 203s. I've gotten to shoot like 50 cals. But I mean, a lot of that stuff you have to do like, they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna go on a 12-mile hump first though, and it's like, oh, can I just like meet you at the end?
Yeah,
like,
can I?
But it was cool because I didn't have to carry the same gear because I didn't bring any of it. I've got my rifle and I've got my day pack, but like, I mean, these guys are carrying 70 pounds of gear. Like, yeah, I've got my sappies and my flak jacket and stuff, but I didn't plan on doing this, so like I didn't have the same gear list that you guys had. So, but yeah, it's pretty cool being able to do stuff like that. Like I can only imagine doing it with like special forces and stuff.
Yeah, that was definitely fun. Those guys, there was a Delta Force. I think he was a sergeant major. I don't know. I mean, none of them wear rank or anything.
Sure.
But he was doing a range. We were doing some training with them. They were doing a 9mm training course. So
cool.
It was really fun. But we showed up and he's given his block of instruction and his belt. He just got a T-shirt on and his BDU pants. And his belt is literally a cravat that he just tied around his waist.
Wow. Yeah, he's in charge. That's
like, okay, you get to do whatever you want.
yeah. Nobody tells him anything. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So you went from so what happened? So you said you went on 2 deployments. So you didn't go to Afghanistan.
No. But
you guys ended up getting orders again to.
So while we were still at West Point, all of a sudden we got. So both of my deployments were kind of last minute surprises.
Okay.
So there had been, and we hadn't been paying attention because we were in West Point working and doing whatever, and then. And we'd been in West Point kind of working and doing whatever. There'd been things going on in Iraq that we didn't really know about, and this was
Yeah.
probably just about a year before the surge and our operation is kind of what led to the surge.
Yeah.
So we got orders while we were still in Iraq, while we were still in West Point to go to Iraq, and we didn't know a whole lot about what it was going to be, but everything was kind of being really, really hush hush, and they're just like, no, you're going to go there, and whatever. So we run back to Fort Bragg really quick, gear up super fast to go to Iraq. So it means we did like a few ranges and did not have like the training that we like to have before. It was just like hurry up and go.
Yeah.
So we go to Kuwait. In Kuwait, they put us on the entire battalion. It's a light infantry battalion. They mounted the entire battalion. So they gave the whole battalion brand new up armor.
Wow.
Humvees. And when I say brand new, the first time I went out to it, there was plastic on the seat. Brand new, the air conditioner still worked.
So this was 2005?
This was, 2005, so this would be...
So that's when they started integrating. I think in the Army, that's when they started integrating them.
Yeah.
A little later for the Marine Corps.
Yeah, so it would be either August or September of 2005 when we were in Kuwait. So we did... mounted the whole battalion for no good reason. I don't know whose idea it was, but everybody hated it. At this point I was in Delta Company, and Delta Company was already mounted.
Yeah.
But we were the only company our job was Overwatch with the 50 cal and the 203 grenade launcher.
Yeah.
And so we were the only mounted ones. Then they mounted the whole battalion, and we all convoyed across Iraq to Al-Assad.
Oh, yeah, been there. Yeah.
So we got to Al-Assad, and we're off in this little corner of Al-Assad, and we still don't know a whole lot about what's going to be going on. Again, I'm like, I don't know if we're doing force protection again. I don't know what. Yeah. And we're kind of looking around at everybody in the chow hall. You like look around and see who's in my area, and there's a Ranger battalion running around, and there's a whole mess of Navy SEALs running around, and there's a whole lot of Delta Force running around, and there's a whole mess of Marines running around, and we're like, okay, we are gearing up for something. So what ended up happening was we spent almost no time inside the wire. The longest I spent outside of the wire was 30 days without coming back in at all. And we went from Al-Assad, we went out to the border of Syria, and our whole mission was to clear north through all of these cities and villages that nobody had been in since the initial invasion. So essentially we were just re-invading that entire section.
Wow.
So second deployment ended up being a lot more exciting than the first deployment.
Absolutely. It sounds like it, yeah. And I think that's kind of where it initially started with doing that, because at that point, I think they kind of laxed a little, and then they went back to taking more drastic measures, because like when I went, it was more, everybody was occupying. There was no more like, well, we kind of let this place, I mean, there was stuff where like we go through there, but we don't stay there, but I mean, just by doing stuff like that, just going, past a place that, it's not as secure as you think is, I mean, it gets your adrenaline going. So going to a place that nobody's been in years, and being like, oh yeah, by the way, this is ours again, like, oh, it's crazy. Yeah.
But so as soon as we got there, our chain of command, who in a sort of uncharacteristic stroke of genius was like, this is dumb to have everybody mounted since everyone's dying via IED. So we ditched most of our up armor Humvees and gave them to, I don't know who ended up getting them, but whoever got them was stoked.
Congratulations,
There you go. We ditched most of the up armor Humvees and found our battalion commander found a some air unit who had been, there were a bunch of Chinook helicopters and they'd just been running supplies back and forth,
Yeah.
and he was like, do you guys want to link up with us and fly us around? And they were like, yeah, that sounds way more fun.
Wow. Yeah, that's
so
crazy.
then
Yeah.
all of our light infantry went on to the Chinooks. So essentially our mission was, our general framework was Delta Company, so us, we would drive down the I&D infested roads, and we would hold position around whatever village or city we were retaking, and then all the line companies would fly in the middle of the night via, Chinook helicopter and start clearing buildings, and then we would apprehend or whatever anybody who tried to escape.
Yeah, and I mean that's just what a crazy upgrade. You went from up armored Humvees to Chinooks. Like, wow, that's I mean, you want to talk about? I mean, I'm sure these people were like, oh, they're just going to come in with Humvees, and then you roll up with Chinooks, and they're like, I'm sure there was a lot more people who surrendered than they initially thought they were going to surrender.
Oh yeah. Well, and at that time there was still a lot of, kind of like you were saying, there's a lot of holding stuff going on. Rules of engagement were pretty convoluted. Our rules of engagement were essentially weapons free. Like we were at that time, we were kind of the only area that was operating that way.
Yeah.
And so it was not nearly as convoluted. We were starting, rebuilding things in Iraq, and our very first operation started where they're like, we're dropping a 20,000 pound bomb on this bridge. And we're like, cool, I guess there's no rules out here.
No, enjoy it. It's the Wild West.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised how your ROEs change from like, I mean, when I first came to Iraq, like, if there's a gun, if they have any sort of weapon, you shoot them. You take them out, you don't want to risk it. And then it was like, well, as long as they don't point it at you, towards the end of my deployment, and it was like, well, I mean, there's been times where it's like, that guy's got an RPG, and they're like, I don't know what to tell you.
Is he pointing at you?
Yeah, and it's one of those things where like, unless he misses, I mean, do you really want to take that chance, but it's just crazy how, it can change in a heartbeat. Like it when they first tried to change the ROE to where it was like, well, don't shoot everybody, I mean, it really bugged me because when we'd be on convoys and we'd be driving, there'd be kids on the overpass and they throw like bricks and stuff, and they use children because they're like, you're not going to shoot a kid. Like, what, you want to bet? Because they would randomly drop, like every once in a while they drop a grenade. You never knew. And, going 45, 50, 60, like, can you give a warning shot? Probably not, so, and it's really weird because then, like a month later when they stop doing it, it's like, all right, well, don't shoot. And then they start doing it again, and it's like, great, like people are getting concussions because they're dropping, cinder blocks off the side, and it's just crazy how it switches from, it's on a whim, and it kind of has to be because you can't like just kill everybody. I mean, it's not good to do it, but it's just crazy how it changes like that, and then you end up doing stuff like just occupying, just hang out here and just look at sand,
Yeah.
It's crazy.
We did one operation where we were actually, so Delta Company, we dismounted and we went into this. It was one of those where like, that you do your briefing beforehand, and we were like, this isn't gonna work. And because they had us, we all flew in on Chinooks and marched across the desert, went down this cliff. So it was us, it was half a battalion and I don't know how many, but half a battalion and a bunch of Marine Scout Recon.
Ooh.
And that's because our scouts were with the other half of the battalion, so we had to use them. So anyway, across the desert, down this cliff, middle of the night, village that's right on the Syrian border. And essentially we drew out the same plan that we always do, which was Delta Company surrounds and, the line companies go in, but we didn't have vehicles in this case. So they essentially just had us lying out in the middle of the field outside, outside the city. So while we were infiltrating, we got in position, and one of our platoons from Bravo Company was right along the Syrian border. Some Syrian border guards decided, hey, America's invading, and opened fire on Bravo Company. And so now we had half a battalion of paratroopers and scout recon and pretty much all the air support that you could possibly want. So we invaded Syria.
Wow.
We invaded Syria and we took over their little village for about a day, and then they called, and told us that we had to give it back, so we left.
Yeah.
But that was when that whole thing popped off. We were just lying right in the middle of a field, and there was actually a mortar position, and someone was walking mortars in on us this way, which, usually we're not dealing with that kind of coordinated fire, but it was Syrian border patrol instead of just, your normal terrorists.
People in Japan in pajamas. It's actually trained professionals,
So we immediately were like, yep, this is why we thought this was a dumb idea. And so we ran across the field and took over some little house, and then we spent the rest of the time there. We're like, we can hold guard from this position.
It's better than just being out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, at least you have walls, it's harder to pick people off, that way. That's crazy. An international incident.
Yeah, it was an international incident. It actually, at some point, it's been declassified now, but they never told us it was classified.
Yeah,
but I found out later that it was.
I think it's been long enough.
Yeah, statute of limitations is up on it.
I don't think. I'll make a few phone calls before I release this just to make sure it's okay.
All right. Well, let's see. So that was 2005 or 2006, somewhere in there. That's pretty much what we did. That whole second deployment, it was just going up, going up, village after village, little tiny forward operating bases. It's funny, you start at like Al Assad, which is, there's movie theaters at Al Assad. It's everything you want.
I think there's a pool there too.
Yeah, there's probably a pool. I didn't see a pool, but I'm sure there's one. There's a bus line, so.
Yeah.
And then the farther out we got, and the farther north we got, until finally we're at these tiny fire bases that are, relief tubes out in the field, and there's no PX, you run out of cigarettes.
Yeah, I went from being in Camp Al-Taqaddum, so TQ, to being in Ramadi, to being at like the government center, where, I mean, it's just basically a couple buildings and some concertina wire, and I can't remember what they're called, with the giant like Texas. I can't remember exactly. Like, they're just the pillars. I can't remember what they're specifically called, but it's just funny how like you have air conditioning, and then the next day you're digging a hole to sleep in. Like, it's funny how deployments vary, and they vary depending on branch, but they also vary depending on your job. Like, it's just crazy how one day you could be sitting in a movie theater, and then the next day you're just watching the stars because there's nothing else to do. It's pretty insane. So what happened after? So you came back from Iraq after your second deployment.
So after I came back that time, I was right at the end of my enlistment, and let's see, I think we got back in, I don't know, like March or somewhere in there, and then I was getting out in April, so it was like right at the end of my enlistment, and so they were pushing hard to get me to re-enlist. And actually, while we were in Iraq, they ghost boarded me, which means that, like, you, in the Army, for promotion, you have to go before a board. In our case, it was all the first sergeants and the command sergeant major. They just ask you questions like crazy. And so we were actually out on mission, and my first sergeant came up to me and he's like, "Hey Doc, congratulations, you maxed the board," and like gave me the thing, and I got 300 points on the board that I never went to. So I was like, cool. So they were trying to keep me,
Yeah.
and they were trying to promote me.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, cool, I'll re-enlist, whatever. I was about to get promoted to sergeant, and then the sergeant list came out, and my name wasn't on it. And so I was like, what's going on? And then up in the office, they're like, oh, we found your packet in this pile that nobody ever sent in. And I was like, I got other stuff to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we actually, at that time, we got new deployment orders, and a friend of mine from the office came down and was like, hey, he's like, a fence is going down around the unit tomorrow. He's like, if you get me this, and this before close of business today, I can get you your orders to get out. And I was like, I will have you those documents, sir.
Yeah.
So I did. The next day, fence comes down around, so I'm going to be stop lost, and everyone's like, you thought you were getting out, you're going nowhere, we're going to, I think we were going to Afghanistan that time.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, and then about a week later I got orders to get out, and I'm just like, how did you get those? It's like,
It's all about who you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, then after that, that's when I got out in April of 2006.
So what do you do? What do you do currently, or what did you do after that? Like.
After that, I didn't do anything for about 6 months or so.
Yeah, sounds like everybody else who gets out. Yeah.
I pretty much didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And then at some point, I was like, oh, well, I need to do something.
Yeah.
Then the GI Bill, there was no post 9/11 yet. So the GI Bill sucked.
Okay.
So I explored school a little bit and just like, GI Bill is garbage, I need to work anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
I spent about a year working retail at Staples, and then I was like, because pretty much I just didn't want to do anything medical at that point. And then I was like, I'm kind of feeling like doing medical stuff again.
Yeah.
So I started working as a nurse's aide at a long-term care facility. Worked night shift, and I was perfectly happy doing that. And then I did that for several years, and somewhere in there is when post 9/11 GI Bill came out, and I was kind of like, maybe I'll go back to school at some point, but whatever. Then in 2010, so about 4 years after I got out, I got married. And I was like, oof, I need to make more money. So then I went back to school, and went through school, went through the RN program, and now currently I'm an RN. So that's what I've been doing for about the last 6 years.
Yeah, that's exciting. And that's funny, you talk about you worked at Staples, like you went from working with, Delta, you would work with Special Forces, and then to now you're selling copy machines at Staples. And I always talk about that, like, you never know who at one point in time, was a badass. And then you go from doing stuff that, people make movies about, to you end up, working at a gas station, or you're selling copy machines, or you're doing whatever. It's just crazy that, because a lot of people think that, if you did all this, crazy stuff in the military, you get out, you get government jobs, you're a cop or whatever, but it's like, not everybody's like that. Like sometimes you end up you work at a guitar center.
Yeah.
You sell guitars, but yet, 4 or 5 years ago you were blowing stuff up, calling in, riding in Chinooks, like it's crazy that, like just how everybody's life is so different after they get out of the military.
Yeah. Well, and now that's one of the things I really like about nursing, because at first I had zero interest in being a nurse. When I was a combat medic, I'm just like, nursing's lame, whatever.
Yeah.
So, but now after being a nurse for a long time, I was an ER nurse first, now I work in surgery, and there's so many similarities between that and being in the military. You rely on your team so much. Everybody has their job, everyone's good at their job, and the stuff you go through together is just as just as traumatic. Everybody's life is on the line every operation that we do.
Yeah.
And So it's a lot of the same kind of, feelings as being in the military. You don't, spend as much time on helicopters or shooting or anything,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
still do some very cool things.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we like, I'm so used to doing this with my other buddy here. We ask two questions every interview. The first one is, what was the best experience you had in the military? Like, when you think about it, you smile, or it brings you joy, or just happiness,
I don't know. It's the best experience, and I feel like for most people, it's just kind of like the friends that you make in the military, even when you don't see them anymore after you get out. Like, they are just your best friends that whole time.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's kind of the stuff you do. We used to do. Me and another medic, because we had sick call Friday morning, which meant that we didn't have to do PT. We did Thursday night Kung Fu night, where we just rent like 3 Kung Fu movies and drink an entire case of beer.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Yeah.
that's fun. So
Yeah.
probably that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the best and one of the most common answers is people talk about making friends like that. I made one of my best friends. Shout out to Alex.
Yeah.
He was in my wedding party. I was the best man at his wedding. I'm the godfather to his new child, and it's those kind of things that really is usually, most people have their best memory with those friends that they make for a lifetime.
Yeah.
And now the second part to this question is usually, what was the hardest or the worst moment you felt like when you were in the military?
I don't know. So, like, while I was in, had friends get killed. My squad leader, got killed while I was there. So obviously that's
Of course, yeah.
that's
That's a big one.
actually, I'm gonna say probably the worst was just when we got back.
Yeah.
Was the families. We had a few people that got killed that night, and I was the medic who was there.
Oof.
And so we got back, and all of their families came to visit us, and they all wanted to talk to me. And so I went through this whole thing of, what was my son's last words and what were, and I'm just like,
Heartbreaking. Yeah.
I'm like 23 years old. I'm just like, I am not emotionally prepared to handle this thing.
And those are things that not a lot of people think about. Like, I can't imagine, because most times you hear about, like, this person died over there, or sometimes you're with them, or you're on the same convoy or something like that. But, like, to actually be there and like hear their last words, and then have to, like, talk to the families about it, and then it kind of feels, it weighs on you. Like, it's their parent. I don't want to talk about it, but it's their family. It's their kids. And then just to think that they don't train you how to deal with that kind of stuff. And then when you come back, like, there's no, like, handbook that says, oh, you had to deal with this. Okay, well, this is the program you're supposed to do. Like, we'll go through these steps. Like, it's crazy how. The military basically teaches you how to be, for the most part, killers and warriors, but they never teach you how to, like, deal with that, like the consequences of those, repercussions of stuff that you did, and that's.
I feel like they're a little better about it now, because there's been so much, publicity over it. When I got out in 2006, there was just nothing. They were just like, okay, have fun. Like, you want to get out? And, they were always mad at you for getting out anyway. So, like, you want to get out? All right, screw you, have fun. So.
Yeah, when I came back from my second deployment, there was kind of, like, mandatory talking to, a therapist. But it was one of those things where you're forcing me to be here.
Yeah, they're just like, go check this box off.
Yeah, and it wasn't one of those, like, you could tell they're not military, because when you sit down and talk to them, they, like, every time you go to the VA or you work with people, you can tell, like, you were military, you weren't. And it's harder for a lot of guys, especially in my experiences, to talk to people at the VA or military therapists or whatever, when they're not military. It's just one of those things you don't understand. Like, like, if you've never been there, you kind of don't understand.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of hard for them to deal with that. So when it's like, oh, well, go talk to a therapist. It's like, oh, if I have to, you know. And then the whole time you're sitting there like, I'm fine. This is dumb. Like, so there's no easy response to it, but
Yeah.
it's and I'm glad they're slowly getting better about it. But same thing when I got out in 2010, it was kind of the same thing. You went through TAPS, and they were just kind of like, well, you're getting out. Use your paperwork, you know, like, good luck, you know, deal with it. Those issues aren't our problem anymore, and it's kind of disheartening, but there's no way to just. There's no way to get it, like, there's no one specific answer for everybody, you know.
Yeah, and that's true. And you know, I've never been like upset about it or anything with the military. Like, I feel pretty much like the military gave me exactly what I was looking for. You know, when I joined, everybody's favorite movie was Black Hawk Down. It's not like we were surprised. I'm like, what did you expect to happen? You knew you were going to get messed up. Like, you know, they gave me what I was looking for, an adventure. Like, I absolutely had adventures, and then I got out, and really, I feel like the military gave me more than they even needed to with the post 9/11 GI Bill, because I went through school, became an RN with essentially 0 student loans. Like, it's huge.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Yeah.
You know, ultimately, I'm going to say that if I had it to do over again, I would absolutely do it over again. So.
Yeah, even with all my hang-ups, you know, I've talked about it in other podcasts and stuff, you know, like, I'd still do it again. I mean, I'm still considering looking at going back in, you know, so I mean, it couldn't have been that bad, you know.
Yeah.
But, so, you know, appreciate you coming, force a habit. I appreciate you, you know, sitting down and doing this, and, you know, if you had a piece of advice to give somebody going in or thinking about going in, what would you tell them?
The main thing I usually tell people who are going in is I say to try to do a job that you can also do on the outside, unless you just want to be infantry and you just really want to be that guy kicking in the door and everything. Like, you know, go for it, more power to you. Otherwise, find something medical or something that's going to transition into a civilian side. And then other than that, just, you know, get into a little bit of trouble, but not too much. Just enough to have fun, but not enough to ruin your life. Don't get anyone pregnant, and don't get married until you're done.
And don't buy that Mustang right outside of base.
Oh God, do not buy a Mustang.
No matter how good it looks and everything, but that 35% interest rate, like, don't do it.
However, go to the next town over and test drive one, because they will let you. If you tell them that you're a lieutenant who just got back from deployment, we did this. We went and drove 2 Mustang 5.0s because we told them we were, and we're like, okay, we're going to go drive Corvettes now, and then left the lot and never went back.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's
that was
awesome. Yeah, it's those little things that you kind of take advantage for, you know, when you're kind of in the military and stuff. So, but all right, so, you know, we appreciate all the support that we're getting from everybody, you know, and, you know, like I say, if you know anybody who, you know, wants to be interviewed, or we're starting to do businesses as well, you know, feel free to reach out to us. But, you know, thanks for coming by, and we'll see you guys in the next one.